Good day, everyone. Today I'm coming to discuss a theme that is quite present in our minds nowadays: illness. And of course, I'm mostly interested in illness, not from the point of view of our physical body, not from the point of view of medicine, but from the psychological point of view. Illness is something that afflicts us, that can produce strong emotional responses, namely the famous stress response. And of course, first let's consider that the stress response happens when our body, our mind, mostly our brain in this case, detects or thinks it is detecting some kind of a danger. Well, usually when we are informed that we are ill, we have this kind of perception, but also when we perceive that our body is in some kind of suffering, namely physical pain, lack of energy, dizziness, and so on, well, usually our body responds strongly with a stress response because it sort of gets scared. Then there is a red alert to our body, which is not pleasant, but also might help us respond to some situations. Well, when we are ill, for one reason or another, our body and sometimes our mind tends to panic a little bit. When we detect physical danger, usually you have a strong emotional response. It increases also when there is physical pain, because physical pain is a general danger warning. And when we have that, many times we feel that we might be in danger. That is also one part of the problem. When we think that we are in danger because our body is in danger, well, that corresponds to what the dominant normalized science of today is telling us, that we are our body and our mind is our brain. So if our body is ill and if our body is in danger because of some possible mortal disease, we panic. We get easily anxious. Of course, we also know that some research, actually a lot of research done recently, there was a very interesting book about that, published I think around 2003, 2004, a handbook of religion and health, where we find lots of research projects that actually were showing that religious people and spiritual people, not fanatics of course, tend to be more resilient before illness, tend to manage it better, they tend to respond with less stress. Of course, there might be a lot of reasons for this, namely mutual support from friends and from people who share the same spiritual approach, but also in such areas, we tend to believe that we are not just our body, that our mind and our consciousness are somehow different, eventually independent from our physical bodies. And so when our body is in danger, perhaps we are not in our deep consciousness and our deeper identity, the deeper self. And eventually that allows us to feel differently about it, to have more hope. I like to recall that a friend of mine described some years ago that she met a Buddhist master, a woman, and when she was about to die in her bed, she was the one smiling and comforting others around her. Probably because she was not at all identifying with her body and her bodily process, even the pain. Probably she was relaxing inside, she was responding in a peaceful way, she was accepting what was going on in her body while keeping a sane mind. That is also part of the thing we can do. We can cultivate a sane mind, peace of mind, even when our body is ill and when our body is in pain. This is feasible, but also in the same way that religious and spiritual approaches tell us to prepare our death long before we are getting close to it, if we prepare our mind and our consciousness to make a distance, to observe and to detach from our body, later on this gets very useful when we are managing disease. I would say that this can be done. I have some contact with it in my own path across life. And indeed, when we have just physical pain, there is a tendency around with a red stress alert from our bodies. There is a tendency for our emotional system to identify with what is going on and to panic. And indeed, to manage physical pain, it's fundamental to avoid that, to detach a little bit, to observe, and to relax both body and mind. Because otherwise, we increase the bodily tension, and the bodily tension increases physical pain and suffering. Indeed, when we have physical pain, a very good way to deal with it is to manage it relaxing, making some distance and relaxing physically and mentally before it. Of course, we also know that even when we are not spiritual or religious in any way, to have references like a reason to live, high values for our lives, that helps also, because then we know that eventually the same reason we have to live is the reason we have to die with dignity, if that were the case. So, to have strong references, to know that there are things worth living for, that helps at the time of death or of threat to our physical body. So distancing and detaching from our body is really helpful. That's something we might cultivate. In the same way, perhaps having the hope and sometimes the direct experience that we are more than our body, we are more than our emotions, we are something else, that helps. Then again, when we are ill, to the extent we make some distance, we can manage our behavior before illness, we can manage our emotions, and we can also, from our mind, build a response to illness that helps promote health. And even when we are ill, it's good to avoid images of disaster about ourselves and our bodies. Instead, it's very useful, and this has been researched, it's very useful to cultivate health. Mental health is fundamental, keeping dignity, keeping peace of mind, observing more than evaluating, all that stuff. But we also know that it's important to have images of health. Mental health, physical health, the idea that we are not just blindly believing that we are going to be okay, that's about it. No. Sometimes we would know that that might be just a fantasy. But we can put a good fight. We can go for it. We can cultivate health. We can do our best and then rest in peace, because that's what we are doing. No one has the right to ask us to do something else, not even ourselves, perhaps. So in this time of pandemics, of course, although there is a lot other illnesses aside from COVID, in this time we can also do our best, but we can also use this time to know more about ourselves, to assert our inner human dignity, to detach from the body, to go for a deeper spiritual development, meaning mostly a development of consciousness and mind. We can go for ethics, and we can understand that friends are the ones who support us in time of need, namely when we are ill, the real ones. But also nowadays, this is an opportunity for lots of us humans to understand that perhaps we are friends of all human beings and all living beings, and this is the time to support each other the best way we can, to understand and support, not to fight, not to move against others, not to evaluate a lot and then understanding just a little bit. This is a time to support each other. And love, again, is healthy and is a good answer to the ongoing times. And this is what I wanted to share for this moment. And if you like, as usual, comment, share, subscribe the channel. See you.